Welcome back to the channel, guys. This is VIN 0832832. This is a 2016 that popped up on Auto Trader, paint code 083, which is ultra white with LA30 red interior. Most common color combination that exists on these cars, white with red. 80,000 miles for $43,000 in California, and as I said, it's on Auto Trader. So let's go ahead and jump into it, see what we know about this one. Production statistics. So as I said, this is the most common color combination. 648 out of the 2,348 cars that were made for the US 49 that I've identified were ultra white. Of those 648, 361 had LA30 red interior. The most common color combination you will find on these cars. For 2016, 372 out of the 1,417 cars were ultra white, and of those, 214 had LA30 red interior. So 1 of 214 at its very rarest, but 1 out of 10 rarity as far as that goes. Most common you're gonna see, usually when a white one pops up for sale, it usually has red interior, so this is no exception. Carfax, Epic VIN, and AutoCheck. Carfax shows this as a one-owner car as a corporate vehicle, probably just registered to the person's company, but there are no accidents, but there is one damage report reported on January 12th of 2023 as minor with no further details. That could be a windshield replacement. It could be they ran over something and had a fender liner, bumper or something replaced, but it wasn't an accident, but there was prior damage reported. So this being a one-owner car, and it's the owner selling it, probably would be able to answer that pretty quickly by inquiring and asking about that. Epic VIN shows this as a one-owner, no accident vehicle, and AutoCheck also shows this as a one-owner, personal, not corporate, registered vehicle with no accidents. So I think it's safe to assume this is a one-owner, no accident car with one incident or damage report. And so obviously, as I said, inquire with the owner since it is the original owner that's selling the car, and see what's going on there. Previous sales, other than now, there's only one. February of 2016 for $88,000 in Mission Viejo, California, and now here in December of 2025 for $43,000 with 80,000 miles by the original owner. So as far as price is concerned, so the average mileage that you usually see for a 2016 right now is in the mid to upper 60s for mileage, 60,000 miles. This one being 80,000, it's probably a little, you can price it a little bit lower, but it's still kind of in that $48,000 to $52,000 range. And this being $43,000, I would say it's priced low, probably, upper 40s, 48,000 maybe, maybe even closer to 50. That's probably in the range of where I would price this. So I would not expect this to sit around too long at this price. At the end of the day, it's desirable. It is a one owner, no accident vehicle with some damage reported. Just get to the bottom of that. And it's a California driven car. So is it well serviced? We'll dive into that here in a minute and see. But, I would say overall so far, it doesn't look bad. I don't see any red flags other than maybe that damage history. Speaking of the damage history, let's move on to the photos. I do see a little bit of damage on the front bumper there on the front passenger side and on the front lower passenger side. And that could be something from a curb. Typically common on these bumpers, the lower front pieces stick out a little bit. And so usually those will catch on things like curbs and parking stones, etc. That may be what's going on here. The one thing that seems to be a little concerning for me is it looks like the hood might actually be bent. And I can't tell based on the photos, so the car's a little dirty, but I can't tell if it's shadows or if there actually is a bend in the hood on the passenger side where it meets the passenger side fender. That would be something to look at closely if you're gonna look at this car. I don't know what's going on there. It could have been something like maybe when the hood was shut, something was sitting on the shock tower and it bent the hood there. But to me, it looks like the hood's bent, and I don't think the hood doesn't look like it's popped in that photo. So look a little bit closer there. That would be the big cautionary thing that I have on this car. Something going on with that hood. The front bumper can be repainted. That's not a big deal. The rest of the exterior looks good other than just the car pretty much needs a good detail. The interior, it's the same story. It just needs a good detail. I don't see any excessive bolster wear. I don't see any issues with the carbon fiber trim, which is very common on these cars, so I don't see any issues there. But really, as I said, a detail would go a long way with this car, and then some better photos. But shiny leather is dirty leather, and so you can see that the seats are shiny. Here are photos when the car was new, this exact car when it was new, and you can see that the leather is sort of a matte or a satin finish. That is what new leather looks like in these cars, and so when they get shiny, they're dirty. But just as I said, a very good detail on this car would go a long way. But other than the issue with the hood and whatever that damage reported was, those are really the only cautions that I have on this car so far. Service history. So this car, it looks pretty well dealer serviced too. The first entry of note is June of 2016. The navigation unit was freezing up and they rebooted it and hasn't appeared to have an issue since then. And so the navigation being sluggish or freezing up, there was a firmware update or a customer service program that addressed that. Especially these early cars, a lot of them had issues of that. September of 2016, the JLB recall was done. So that's the high pressure fuel pumps. Most of these cars have that done. Regular services, and then on to January of 2019, they noted that it was smoking at times when they started up and it was chirping on the passenger side. Well, you've watched these videos long enough, you know that the chirping is usually the high pressure fuel pumps, and that's what they did here. They replaced the high pressure fuel pump on the passenger side. My orange car has had 3 sets of them now and all replaced under warranty. Well, one was the JLB, but then the other 2 were under warranty. And it was for the complaint for the chirping in the engine bay that was done by the previous owner of my car and didn't fix it. They still chirp again. So that's the nature of a mechanical high pressure fuel pump. They are noisy, they chirp, they make noise. And then more regular service, and then that moves us on to January of 2023. They replaced both front carbon fiber trim panels on the interior. So that would make sense why this car doesn't have any carbon fiber delamination issues, is because it was recently replaced. I say recently, like 2 years ago, but that's why there's no delamination going on, because they've already been replaced. So another good thing there. April of 2024 at 65,000 miles, the 60,000 mile service. So that's good. That is the spark plugs being replaced, the brake fluid being flushed, the very intensive inspection of everything. And at that same service, they did the differential, the TVD service as well. So the diff is already done on this car. December of 2024, at 71,000 miles, front pads and rotors, the 70,000 mile service, and 4 new tires. So about 9,000 miles ago, this car has brand new tires and brand new front brakes. So in July of 2025, at 77,000, about 3,000 miles ago, 75,000 mile service, and the transmission service was recommended, but it was not done. And they also noted that the tires were at 5/30 seconds and 4/30 seconds, which is pretty odd to me, and that seems low considering the tires were just replaced at this point like a few thousand miles ago. So unless it was maybe driven hard or at a track or something like that, then there's no reason the tires should be that low. So that would be something I would look at too. I would inspect the tires and see what's going on there. 6,000 miles on them at that service, and they're saying that they're low. So what's not done? The transmission is not done. I would do that right away. Get it serviced. The ZLZ, so that is the dash customer service program for the delamination, cracking, anything like that. This car's in service date was February 8th of 2016, which means you have February 8th of 2026, 10 years from the in-service date to get the dash replaced. If it's even the slightest bit sticky, Lexus will replace it. On my blue car, has 150,000 miles on it. ZLZ, the parts are ordered for the ZLZ right now. It had a slightly sticky dash, and my service advisor, he went to bat for me on this one, and so he did it on the blue one as well. So this car has a new dash, and the blue one, I would highly recommend before the time runs out getting it done. If you're gonna go look at this car, I would make sure it's up to operating temperature and check the left and right side for the max heat and minimum cool on both sides. Make sure everything responds like it should. Otherwise, you can take it in, do what's called an HVAC servo sweep, which reprograms the limits, the minimum and maximum limits of all of the HVAC servos underneath the dash. If any of those are not responding, then some of those can be expensive to replace because the dash has to be removed. The front lower control arm bushings, as always with these cars, check inner front tire wear and make sure you don't see anything excessive. If you do, then you need front lower control arm bushings, you need an alignment, and you'll probably need new tires too. 2 things that are normally done on these cars that I don't see done on this one is the low pressure fuel pump being reprogrammed. I don't see where it's been done on this car. It is outside of the customer service coverage, the customer service program coverage, but Lexus will still do it. And so in order to see if that is affected on this car, shut everything off except the engine. So shut the HVAC, stereo, seats, shut everything off and listen in the back seat. If you hear a humming or a buzzing noise, then this program applies and the low pressure fuel pump needs to be reprogrammed. I also don't see where the KLG customer service program has been done on this car, and that is the reprogramming of the navigation for the location. Basically, if you're on the main highway, it'll show you off on the side road or something next to the highway. This will correct that. So the brakes are fairly new, the tires are fairly new, but the last service said that they're getting kind of low. So I would look at the tires. You know, that's really it. I don't see a lot else that this really needs, but the other red flags for me would be what's going on with that hood and whatever that prior damage was. And so the first owner, the original owner, is the one selling it here, so obviously they would be able to answer that question for you. But as far as would I buy this car, absolutely. I think that the price is right. Even where it's at now, I would have no problems with it correcting whatever's going on with the hood and, you know, bringing some of the service up to date and potentially tires. And that would put you at where the market is for this, you know, probably like 48, something like that. That's where I would put it. Getting the service up to date, you know, maybe new tires. It really shouldn't need new tires, but if it does, you know, lower control arm bushings, things like that. Of course, inspect the valley plate on this car. So this being a 2016, most of the 2016s are now showing that issue. So get a pre-purchase inspection done and inspect the valley plate. Make sure it's not leaking. If it is, the recent quote I just had on the blue one is $2,300 to get that resealed. This, my orange one had it done for about $1,200 at a Toyota MasterTech. So that's money to put aside for this car as well. And I think that this car definitely has the makings of a good one. Just inspect and kind of assure and satisfy yourself for whatever's going on with that hood and just bring it up to service, the service up to date. But that's really it. So, I mean, I think it's not gonna sit around very long for sale, and I think it's gonna sell pretty quickly. So thanks again for watching, guys. This is Vin0832. We'll see you soon.